People have been using boiled linseed oil to finish their wood products, wood carvings, or anything they made out of wood for thousands of years. And for me, that's part of the appeal. So I want to talk real quick today about boiled linseed oil and about using it safely so that no one gets injured, so you don't burn your house down. So how do you dispose of the rags? What do you do? We'll talk about that real quick. Right here it says, caution, oil-soaked materials may spontaneously ignite. Carefully read all cautions elsewhere in this container. Okay? It is saying that because boiled linseed oil polymerizes. And the issue with polymerization is that it is a process, or what I should say is, polymerization is a process by which oil will cure on a surface after it's been applied and harden. It turns into a plastic, basically. Now, that's fantastic because here's two pieces of wood. On the right, we've got one piece of wood that is unstained, doesn't have any boiled linseed oil on it at all. This one has boiled linseed oil on it. As of yesterday, this is about 24 hours after application. Now, what's wonderful is it gives it a nice tone, a warm color. It really darkens up that end grain because the boiled linseed oil soaks more into the end grain than it does into the side grain there of the carving. And these two carvings both were touched with a knife on every surface, so it's a really good indication and visualization of what it looks like. And this carving here had boiled linseed oil applied to it, probably about 3.5 to 4 months back. No, probably about 3 months back. This is a great indication of the yellowing that will start to occur on a boiled linseed oil carving. And I don't mind this at all. I think that this carving looks absolutely fantastic. He's been sitting on my shelf because we're getting closer to Christmas and the wife likes having him out, and I think he looks really neat. I like that look that's created, but it's going to continue to yellow over time. So if you don't finish a carving with paint, that's something to be concerned about, something to think about. Now, when it comes to polymerization, what is polymerization? Polymerization is the process by which the oil cures and hardens. Now, curing and drying are two separate things. Drying is simply the act of something stopping being wet, where it ceases to be wet. Curing is not that. Curing is a chemical process by which that oil changes from being an oil to being a solid. And when it does that, it generates heat. So here's an oil-soaked rag, okay? This rag is soaked in BLO and it's still wet, and you can see it coming off in the gloves, okay? It is soaked completely. As this rag starts to harden, it's going to heat up. All of that boiled linseed oil in here will heat up, and that heat can catch this rag on fire. Now, why, having this thing here soaked in boiled linseed oil, did this not catch fire? It's made out of wood, right? So theoretically, shouldn't it catch fire as well? Well, the surface of this wood is all open to the air. And what's nice about that is as it polymerizes and heats up, all that heat can escape quite easily because it's all open. So, with this rag here, if I have it wadded up like this is where the danger comes in. You will see news headlines about people's homes catching on fire because they left a boiled linseed rag like that in the corner. And the heat will generate inside of there as this stuff starts to cure, as it starts to harden. And as it generates in there, it'll generate to like 300-400 degrees if it's a closed environment and air can't get out. And as it does that, it'll heat up and just continue to heat up until it catches fire, and this lights on fire, and something near it will light on fire, and it'll burn your house down. That's terrible. So how do we take care of this and keep it safely? You need to interrupt the polymerization process, for one. And you can interrupt it quite easily by soaking this rag in water. If I take this rag to the sink and I rinse it out in cold water, I will interrupt that polymerization process because I'm going to dilute it significantly. So it will not polymerize as easily nor as quickly. When it comes to linseed oil, this is not just linseed oil. Regular linseed oil comes from a flaxseed. And that stuff takes a long time to polymerize. It takes up to a month or more. Boiled linseed oil is not just boiled. There's a misnomer here, right? They're claiming something in the title of this that's not entirely true. To quicken the polymerization process, they used to boil natural linseed oil and bring it close to a boil, not to a rolling boil, just heat it up close to one, because that would start the polymerization process. And then when they apply it to wood, back in ancient times with the Vikings, Scandinavians, the Anglo-Saxons, right? When they apply it to wood then, it would polymerize more quickly because it had been pre-boiled prior. In modern times, we do that process, and we also add a lot of chemical add-ins, a lot of chemical additions that process and speed up that polymerization process. And those extra chemicals are why I'm wearing gloves. Hear that. This is not just boiled linseed oil. You have to fight to find regular, natural boiled linseed oil that doesn't have all those additives in it. But this is the truly dangerous stuff, because that speeding up of that process generates even more heat. And that more heat is where you wind up having the issue with houses catching on fire and your materials catching on fire. So we want to interrupt that polymerization process. And whether you're using any kind of oils, this is a great idea. And if you're using any kind of boiled linseed oil at all, I suggest doing this. Take your rags when you're done and go soak them in water, and then go hang them out to dry, or lay them flat on a concrete floor. After it's been soaked in water, lay it flat like so on a concrete floor like that right there, and let it dry naturally. Just like this wood here, right? When I soaked him in boiled linseed oil and I set him off to the side, he just dried and cured over time, and having it all open to the air allowed that heat to escape naturally, and I didn't have an issue with him in catching fire, right? The same thing. Soak this in water so that you interrupt that polymerization process. You will dilute the boiled linseed oil, and then it will polymerize far more slowly, and then lay it out on concrete, or hang it up if you want to on a clothesline outside, and let it dry. Let it cure naturally, and it won't catch fire. To catch fire, you've got to wad it up and create a way to trap that heat. And if you do that and you leave this on a table through negligence, it could very likely catch fire. Now, for me, I don't go through all the trouble of wadding them up every time when I'm done. I will take this and I will throw it in a barbecue pit outside to store it. And I've gone out there over the course of a year and thrown my rags in that barbecue pit. And then after they cure for a week or so, I'll go out there and I'll empty it out and I'll take it to the trash can and throw it away. Since I've done that, I've gone out there twice over the course of a year, and I've noticed that they caught fire. Inside a barbecue pit, an old barbecue pit that I'm not using, a charcoal barbecue pit, they caught fire twice. Now, that's dangerous. I shouldn't be doing that, and you shouldn't do that either. What you should do is coat them in water to interrupt that polymerization process, and then lay them flat on concrete so they can dry naturally. So if you are using boiled linseed oil, that is how you use it safely and without a problem. And remember this too, right? I'm using gloves right now because this is not 100% natural boiled linseed oil. This has a lot of chemical additives in there that's not good for your skin. And I'm a man. I don't care too much about whether or not I have good skin, but that's the kind of stuff that will eventually give you skin cancer over a long enough period of time. And if I'm using it once or twice over the course of, a few months, I wouldn't mind. But I'm using this stuff so often nowadays, I'm using it probably once a day. Once a day means I'm wearing gloves when I utilize it because I'm trying to be smarter, right? So that's the boiled linseed oil. With all of that said, understand that any oil that polymerizes has this issue. If it polymerizes, that act of curing, hardening, that's going to generate heat. But ones that don't have those chemical accelerants aren't going to do that process quickly. So a linseed oil is still going to polymerize, but it will polymerize over the course of a month. And generating a little bit of heat over the course of a month, it has time to dissipate. It is far less likely to catch fire. So anything that polymerizes has that danger, but they're not nearly as dangerous as boiled linseed oil that has had chemical accelerants added to it. That's the kicker, that's the clincher. Chemical accelerants added to it. If you get a natural linseed oil, bring it close to a boil, and then use that, it is far less likely to generate too much heat and catch fire because it's not going to do that as quickly. It's not going to polymerize as quickly. It will polymerize far faster than regular non-boiled linseed oil. Why do we boil linseed oil? Again, it's because by bringing it closer to a boil, that will expedite that polymerization process, because otherwise it's going to take months to cure, right? And regular linseed oil that has been boiled has a tendency to go bad and rancid over time. So all of that are food for thought. I'm going to continue to use boiled linseed oil because I love it. I love the look. I love the effect. But I'm going to keep in mind that it can be dangerous if mistreated, and I'm not going to mistreat it. And you shouldn't either. So if you do use it, keep all this in mind. That's all I've got for you today. Listen, I really appreciate you guys watching. Let's stick around to the end of the video. If you like the video down below, subscribe to the channel, and then stick around and watch some of these other videos popping up on the screen because I got more content for you. Thank you guys so much. Hey, head over to Instagram and give me a follow over there too. And I'll see you next time.